Well, that was kind of an unepic intro. I get a little stuck. Hey, welcome to Flow Tricks. It is Ken. It's Sunday, every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Usually, we are doing a live stream where I answer your questions about nunchucks, staff, double staff, whatever you want to know, performance, ninja stuff, anything you want to know about stepping into those worlds a little bit more. We've been doing this for, where is the chat window? There we go. We've been doing this for, well, since COVID started pretty much, and it's been a lot of really great videos, but it needs your input, so if you have any questions at all, this is the time to connect with me. Before we begin too, just keep in mind I have an email, and if you want to send me a link to your YouTube video, if you don't mind us reviewing it on Sundays, more than happy to take a look and give you advice. My email address is ken.flowtricks, flowtricks @gmail.com. That's ken.flowtricks@gmail.com. Always happy to get more questions and material because I love being able to help people directly. That's the number one thing I like about live streams, is being able to interact with you guys as opposed to just making random videos. I've said that many times. Before we begin, I just want to say a couple things. One, I went jogging today, which was a horrible idea. It was a horrible idea because it was 95 degrees out, and I thought I could pull it through, and it just wiped me out. So I'm pretty tired right now. I just was like in the heat, and I was halfway home, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be quite the day today. So there's that. Want to thank Dark Monk and Flow Toys. Dark Monk makes all my fire chucks and my training chucks. They are awesome as always. You guys know these chucks very well. And then also want to thank Flow Toys. Flow Toys does amazing LEDs for practice as well as performance. Both are great companies, been sponsors of FlowTrick for a long time. Always highly recommend them to be checked out. And what else do I want to say? I want to give a shout out to Danny Nguyen. He's a brand new Patreon donor. If you guys don't know, this is based on donations, which is down below. I figured I'd give the spiel in the beginning and get it out of the way. So FlowTricks runs off donations. So if you like what you see, just think of it like, like a dojo. Just buy me a cup of coffee or something. That would be awesome. That'd be amazing. But donations are paypal.me/flowtricks, or I have exclusive videos and all kinds of extra things if you support me monthly at patreon.com/flowtricks. All of it is, of course, is very appreciated, especially in the COVID era. I hope you all are doing well. I don't even know. Like, this year has been such a blur, and I got a couple of thoughts I wanted to share. One was just about martial arts, and the value of martial arts goes well beyond learning how to fight, as well as learning how to spin. If there's one thing that martial arts really taught me, it's how to have a fighting spirit, and I think it's important. And I think that COVID has definitely been one of those times where I needed to have a fighting spirit, because when you're in martial arts and you go against that black belt, you're gonna lose. You're gonna get beat pretty hard. But you don't get defeated. That's the point. You don't get defeated. You get slammed, you get knocked out, you get tapped out, you get worn out, but you come back to the mats, you do it again, and you do it again. You get a little bit smarter every time. And with COVID, I feel like having this kind of spirit is good, because you don't want to get defeated by it. And you're going to get slammed, like these times are just crazy, so people are going to get slammed a lot more than usual. And the ability to learn how to break fall and to learn how to take those hits and to come back up, and even if you lose again, to stand back up again, as long as you're learning something and you're coming back to those mats, respect your opponent, keep going. There's just something about that I really like, and I feel like it's very handy with everything, really. And then the other thing I want to talk about is just the thought about performing. Something that I had recently read about, which is this thought, and I've heard this a lot, and I figured I'd address this directly. And this is like, if you see someone up on stage, right, and you want to be up on stage, and you start looking and watching this performer, and you say, wait, I can do that. Hey, I can do that move too. I should be up there. I can do all those moves. Why am I not up there? And when people say that, I want to just kind of talk about this, because I think when people say that, to me it sounds like it would be like if you read a Harry Potter book and you're like, wait a second, I know all these words that they used in this Harry Potter book. I could have written this book. Well, of course you could, right? Of course you could have written this book if you knew all the words, but that's not why you would have. There's no, of course you could. You probably wouldn't have written the Harry Potter book. You would have written something else, because just like techniques with your nunchucks or techniques, they're like words. And if you just look at the words in themselves, you could say, oh, well, if I know all the words of a Harry Potter book, I can write a Harry Potter book. But what gets people, when people read a Harry Potter book, they're not saying, wow, what a great word that was. Ooh, here's a new word, I like that. No, what they're reading is how all the words are put together to create a feeling or a character or a vision, and to take you on a journey. And that is not something that you can easily duplicate. You can copy all the words you want, but to be able to get the feeling and the vibe, that is different. So when you're watching a performer, you should be looking at that, because that is the essence of how you can also use it for yourself, but you should find your own path to do it in. So what I'm trying to say is knowing all the techniques is just like knowing all the words in a dictionary. It doesn't necessarily mean you can write that book. So when you see a performer up there putting all these techniques together, it's very similar to just having a bunch of words together. Just because you know all the words doesn't necessarily mean you can write it in the same way. And just because that performer's out there doesn't necessarily mean that if you mimic their techniques, you two would have even the same vibes. You probably wouldn't. You'd probably have your own vibe and they'd have their own vibe. And depending on how they developed it and depending on how you developed yours, will have a totally different effect on the audience and people. So when you start thinking in terms of your effect and what kind of effects you can make with your chucks, with your techniques, you'll start approaching things differently when you look at performing. You're no longer thinking about putting random words together, but you're looking at how you can build those words into some sort of feeling and how to turn yourself into some sort of character, and then things change just a little bit. So just consider that. There's just something I wanted to say, because especially when people become critical of others, I want to make sure everyone thinks about when someone's performing that it goes well beyond the technique. Matter of fact, techniques is just a bridge to create the feeling of excitement or whatever it is that person's trying to create. And so that should be a goal for you, but to do it in your own way as well. So becoming a great performer does not necessarily mean having all the techniques. That's just like having all the words. It's really about how you weave it all together into a story. Okay, that's my spiel. That's all I wanted to say about that. So I've got a couple things we can talk about, but first I want to give some shout outs as well as answer direct questions. I'm going to check Facebook first because I've been having some problems with getting the Facebook messages, so give me just a second here. All right. Again, if you guys have any questions, or gals, if y'all have any questions, be sure to message. Send me an email or message on YouTube or message on Facebook. I have all of them open right now, and I'm checking them simultaneously. All right, so here we go. Want to give a shout out to JSJD. He says, nice, as always. And Hi-Ho says, hi, Ken, I can't make it to the live stream, but I have a question about performances. How do you get around the legality of chucks when performing? So in the States, a lot of the legalities have been lifted. We don't have as many legal issues with nunchucks. I'm going to be honest, I don't recommend that you do what I do when it comes to legalities, and pretty much I just figure I can explain my way out of it, show them some videos, you know, things of that nature. If I'm going through the airport or if I'm flying or if I'm traveling to a place, I'll detach the nunchucks. You can look up something called airport loops for nunchucks. Let me see if there's a airport loops nunchaku. Give me just a second. Let's see if we can bring this up and I can show you what an airport loop is. Okay, this is my email. That's definitely not it. There we go. Boom. I have a video called If You're in a State That Doesn't Allow Nunchucks, right? That's not me. That's some advertisement. Even I have to watch my own advertisements. That's freaking hilarious. But this one right here, oh my God, look how young I was. What is this, 2012? This was 8 years ago. Holy cow. If you're in a state that doesn't allow for nunchucks, then what? If you see these nunchucks are separated because there's something called airport loops. I highly recommend that you take a look at this video and it'll help you. It'll give you a little bit of guidance. But basically, if you're able to, what am I doing? If you're able to take apart the chucks, if you're able to take apart the nunchucks, to detach them, then they won't be identified as nunchucks, so you're able to travel with them. That will cover you all the way up until the performance, of which, if it's highly illegal where you're at, there may be some laws with schools or dojos, so you may, like, sometimes they say, like, you can do it if you're in martial arts. It really depends on what you're doing, but if that's the case, then maybe you could tie into some dojos and see if you can get some sort of accredited permission. Otherwise, you either don't bring your nunchucks or you just take that risk. Me, myself, I generally have taken the risk. I haven't had any problems with it. And I figured if I did, I would explain my way out of it. I really would. I don't know if it'll always work. I might lose my chucks, but I'd rather take that risk than to not, personally. All right, let's see what we got here. Tim, Ken, after a long time. Oh, cool. Laurel from India, remember me? Yeah, it has been a minute. Can you please teach the helicopter throw and some cool combos? I love cool combos. Definitely. I can show you something. Yeah. Again, you have to excuse me. I'm a little worn out. Should not have jogged in 95-degree weather. All right. Helicopter throw. A helicopter throw is basically when we're doing over-the-shoulder passes. Let me turn this up a little bit. Oh, we are at max. Give me just a second. I'm trying to brighten up the... There we go. A helicopter throw is when we're doing over-the-shoulder passes like so, right? And a helicopter throw comes from an under-the-shoulder pass, or an over-the-shoulder pass. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of swing our arm outward like this, and we're going to lift it up. This is what it looks like. Okay? So what we're doing here, it kind of has a diagonal motion that's happening, like the chucks are kind of spinning up here. But what's happening here is I'm swinging out across this way. Now I'm not letting my elbow go. My elbow's kind of staying tucked in here because this will allow the chuck to start moving backwards towards my body. As it's going backwards, I'm lifting up at the same time. Do you see how my elbow stays here? You don't want it to go out here or the chucks will go flying away. So you really want to keep that elbow tucked, and you're going to lift it up and over like this. So we're here, straight up and over. Like that. And you can see my hand is moving diagonally like this. So it's not going up and down, and it's not going side to side. It's going like this. So as I pass it here, that's kind of how it looks. And then the moment we get it here, the moment I get it up to here, I open my hand and I just lift it like that. So it's here and over. There we go. You can kind of control the spin by pinching it between your thumb and your pointer finger like this. That will allow you to, as you're spinning it outward, I'm kind of flicking it out like this and then lifting it up. So this little flick will help it to come back. So as I'm doing it, there's like this flick that happens like that. And that's just me grabbing it with the chucks like this and then flicking it that way. It's almost like you're flipping a card, like that. It's here, look. So it's the same kind of concept, but that's a helicopter throw. So you flick it and lift it up. Cool combos. Cool combos. There's a lot of cool combos out there. One combo that I really like are cross grab combos. So I kind of like to do like cross grab bounces like this. You can build off of this combo by just adding another number 3 bounce. So this is the combo that I'll show you. It's not too hard to do, and it's kind of fun, and it's a building block to a lot of other moves. The way this works is we do a number 3 bounce. So if my chuck is in my right hand, I am going counterclockwise, and I'm almost like I'm touching my armpit, and it's going to bounce underneath the delt right here. Boom, like this, right? Now once this happens, it goes almost like a figure 8 to my side. So it looks like I'm doing a figure 8 over to the side. So it's a bounce, and it goes up like it's doing a figure 8, and it's going to slash across to the other side of my body over here. Once it's on the other side, I do another bounce like this. So just try this to start. Just go here, bounce, revolve, bounce. See if you can get that part. If you can get that part, that may be all you need to do to start with, because you can just go back and forth with this basically. Once you bounce it, it's going to reverse direction, so it's going to be like a reverse figure 8, except all we're going to do is we're going to slash it back up this direction, okay? So it's 1, 2, 3. I'm going to tilt this down a little bit so you can see. All right. 1, 2, 3, right? That in itself isn't the most exciting thing. You can eventually go really fast with this. And I like to generally use my hand when it's back to push outward, just so because you could also look like this if you're not using your body, which is okay. But if we move our stance a little bit, it just has more energy, right? So 1, 2, now you see I'm just pushing my hand out for 2, 3. Once we do 3, we're going to go underneath, and my hands are going to cross, making an X. So it's going to cross, making an X, and I'm going to do a cross grab here. Once I do the cross grab, I let go with the hand, with my right hand, and I push it over to my left, and it does the same thing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, cross grab. And then you have this really cool combo. But what I like about this is this bounce combo can be really handy. Eventually you'll be able to learn how to like turn with it, so you can turn. And you can just do this same motion with the cross grab in order to get around. You can actually do a lot of movements with it. So I find that to be a really fun and cool combo to use. We'll just go with that one for now, because that's going to be quite a bit for you to practice with. Even if you can't get the full combo, just even being able to go from cross grab to number 3 bounce, to cross grab to number 3 bounce, is pretty good. Even this one. And just practice the catch. And then what you can do is you can add rotor passes instead of cross grabs. So if we're doing cross grabs here, we can also, once we do a cross grab, go to a rotor pass. Oops. Let's try that again. So if you do a cross grab, go to a rotor pass, and then do a number 3 bounce. And then you have something a little bit more fun. I mean, there's a lot of different options you can go from there, but I think that would be a nice one too. So it'll be number 3 bounce, cross grab, number 3 bounce, cross grab, rotor pass, grab, and back. So those are some cool combos. You have a lot of options on top of that too. Again, my apologies. I'm a little out of breath today. Should not have jogged in 95-degree weather. Came back and I'm just like, oh, the reverse figure 8. Oh, shoot. So the combo that I showed you, I should have probably finished reading your question, because the combo that I showed you does the reverse figure 8, but you need to learn how to do a reverse figure 8. So let's talk about that for a second. A regular figure 8 creates 2 circles. You got a circle to your right and a circle to your left. And when the chuck is at the top, you swing down. So when the chuck is at the top, you swing down. That is a regular figure 8, right? The reverse figure 8, the way to visualize a reverse figure 8, which is up like this, the way to visualize a reverse figure 8 is when the chuck is at the bottom, it swings up. So it swings to the bottom and goes up to the other side. So we have a circle on this side and a circle on this side, just like before, except this time we swing it when the chuck is at the bottom. So when the chuck is at the bottom, we swing up and cross over. And again, once it goes to the bottom here, we swing up and cross over. Keep in mind, I have 2 circles right here. It doesn't matter where those circles are. No matter where these 2 circles are. So even if I stand here and I create these 2 circles here, this is a regular figure 8, because every time it's at the top, I swing down to the other side. When this chuck is at the top, when it's up at the top, it's going to swing down to the other side, and that's what makes it a regular one. The reverse version is when it's at the bottom, it swings up. So what I'm trying to, regular figure 8 swings down. Regular figure 8 swings down. Whoosh, whoosh. Reverse figure 8 swings up, up, up. If you've ever done stick fighting or knife fighting, a lot of times it's going to be like your pinky finger is going to lead a lot of the reverse moves. The thumb is sticking out and it's shooting upwards like this. It's almost like you're doing an uppercut. It has a very similar feel to like throwing uppercuts, except for it's more diagonal. And it's the same thing here. This is swinging up. See, this is a reverse figure 8. So that's kind of a way that you can remember. Swing the nunchuck and kind of throw an uppercut, and you'll be kind of along the right planes, or the right motion that you need to do with your reverse figure 8. And the combo I showed you right before that, there's this kind of a prerequisite to have that figure 8. So good homework. Good homework. Hey, welcome, Ben. Thanks for the hi. Ike Flow, what is up? Hey, Ken and everyone else, you have been a regular for quite a while. Hope you're doing good, man. Hope you're doing good. Hope you have some good questions. I don't think there's a lot of questions today, so let me know. I'm going to check Facebook really quick. I saw that there's a post. Yeah, nothing yet, though. Okay, cool. Oh, hello, Christina, and hello, Zia. Welcome, welcome. Happy to see you guys are aboard. Have any questions? Be sure to holler. All right. Alpha Omega Zero. Hey, Ken, did you end up looking at the Patreon court case and how it might affect your income if things go south? As far as I know, everything that I've read so far, things are going to be okay because Patreon has enough money for it. I do have a backup plan through PayPal, of course, that I've been working through, but I've been kind of watching and holding steady. I haven't heard anything new about it. Everything I've heard so far is that it won't destroy Patreon if they do get sued by that guy, but well, they are getting sued by all of his people, but it sounds like it's a bit of a mess, that's for sure. Jim says, hey Ken, you're the man. Can you touch on the reverse illusion roll? Struggling big time. Yeah, sure. Reverse illusion roll is not an easy move. So the best way I can describe that you get used to the reverse illusion roll is to not try to do the reverse illusion roll first, but to break it down into little pieces. The first piece is that, this is a weird shirt. The first piece is that we're gonna hold the chuck and we're gonna be spinning it. I don't know if you're right-handed or left-handed, but if you're right-handed, you're going to be spinning the chuck clockwise. If you're left, it will be counterclockwise. If you're right-handed, it'll be clockwise, like this, right? Now, make sure that you're in reverse grip. Don't be in front grip, you're gonna be in a back grip, right? And what I'd like to see you do is spin the chuck, and the moment that the chuck is at 12 o'clock, so when this is spinning, the moment the chuck is facing up, just see if you can torque your hand down. Now for this to work right, you have to keep this part of the chuck as still as possible. Because if this chuck is spinning up and your hand moves it around, it'll start to bounce. So your hand has to be very still. So hold it and see if you can just kind of dip it down like this. You have to be able to do this motion before you can get the reverse illusion roll, because this is the part that is the hardest, is the ability to do this. Now, if you look, I have my pointer finger up like this, and what I try to do is I imagine that this is almost like a crank. This is stuck exactly where it is in space, and I'm just trying to move it like this. So as this chuck moves, here, whoosh, you can see that the chuck is pushing through itself. And my apologies if I said the chuck has to be up top. It has to be at 6 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. Because what's going to happen is they're going to push past each other like this, and then as this unwinds, it's going to go back to here, and it's just going to do this infinite loop that happens. So 6 o'clock, this is going upwards, and then it kind of rotates back, and then you have something that looks like this, right? Doesn't have to be perfect. But this is kind of the prerequisite that you want to get used to, is the ability to crank the chuck up and down while the chuck is spinning on the other side, which requires you to have a very still, this needs to be very still in space. If you can't keep this still, it's going to be very hard to control, because it's going to be moving this chuck around that's spinning, and you have no control over this spinning chuck if you don't have control of this. The second part to that is then being able to do a back-to-back wrist roll, which I'm assuming you know how to do. And really what it is it's a combination of three things. It's a float, which is the ability to do a figure 8 wrist roll with your hand moving upwards, or a back-to-back wrist roll with your hand moving up like this. So the next thing I want you to practice is, if you can do a back-to-back wrist roll, start in a back grip, hold it down by your waist, pull this down a little bit, hold it down by your waist, and as you rotate up, slowly lift your hand up like this. It's going to have a different feel than when you can keep it here. You're going to want to spin it slower, and you're going to hold it a little bit lower, not much, but you're not going to want to hold it up high, kind of have more of almost a mid grip, not quite, and see if you can lift it up like so. So straight up, like that, and bring it back down, see if you can lift it straight up again, and that's the next part to it. So once you have both of those together, you combine it and you have the reverse illusion roll. So the end result is you have a back-to-back wrist roll that floats upwards, and the moment you hit the top, this chuck swings down, and then it starts over again. So it's just like this motion, except we're adding the hand roll now. So this motion here goes up and down, up and down. And as you can see, as I go in slow motion, we just broke all these pieces into little parts. So hopefully that'll help. One more time really quick. One part, just learn how to do this. The other part, learn how to do back-to-back wrist rolls, and then slowly lift them. The moment you reach the top, you do the move you just worked on, but drag it all the way back down, and it repeats forever. Eventually there'll be other ones too, like you can come across lengthwise, and there's like diagonal versions of them. They all have their own merits. It gets a little bit harder, but the original move is where you want to start with. And I personally love the move. It feels great. It feels kind of like an anti-spin. It's very easy to drop at first because there's a lot of pressure, especially when your hand drops with the chuck, and when your hand lifts with the roll, there's a lot of ways you can drop that. So hopefully that helps. If you do get a little bit stuck, just send me a message. And I'll be happy to just send me a message, ken.flowtricks@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to take a look at your video and see what's going on with that. All right, let's see. Do I have any more messages? Right now, it sounds like we're fairly clean. Cool. All right. So far, we're fairly clear. So let's go ahead and just start working on some random ideas. If you have any questions, though, do not be afraid to shout out. I'm more than happy to help y'all. So one thing I want you to practice on is, this is more of an exercise than anything. And what I'd like to see you do is I'd like to see you spin your hand with one nunchuck and then do something with your other. One example could be, you could get a drink. You could have a cup of water, for instance, and just do figure eight wrist rolls while you drink it. And see how much you can do without any involvement with the other hand. This could be anything. When you first start, it may be something as simple as holding a pen, right? But eventually what I want you to do is kind of break apart different things. So like, for instance, what I want to see you be able to do is break apart your brain so you can do something independently. For instance, right now, I'm trying my best not to let this chuck hit something while I'm just kind of observing. I can grab, what I was going to say, but I don't have a table with me, is you can even grab a pen and just start writing something down and see if you can keep in flow while not losing track of what you're doing with your other hand. The reason why you want to do this is mostly for doubles, and also when you're performing or when you're doing martial arts or whatever, you have complete control over this hand if you're able to break free from it. And being able to have your other hand in use as opposed to like having it clenched and stuck to your hand, which is usually what happens in the beginning, right? In the beginning when you're first learning, your whole body, oops, yeah, see, I can't even do it right. It's hard for me to look like a beginner because just, but the whole body tends to seize up, right? When you first start, you put in so much work that the whole body moves with it. Everything is really focused on getting the chuck to move. But as you get more comfortable with it, your body relaxes more. And now I just want to see if you can start breaking it apart. So even if you can just move your hand in independent ways, that would be awesome, you know? Or even your hand behind the back. If this is too much, just put a hand behind your back and see if you can get this motion to work too. Whatever you want, just work on just randomizing your movements and seeing what you can come up with. Where did that other chuck go? Here we go. So work on randomizing your movements while another hand does something else. I personally like drinking a pop or something. One of the first shows I ever did, I ate an ice cream cone while spinning a fire chuck. I thought that was pretty nice. Plus I got a lot of free ice cream from the vendor. All right, I see another question here. Any tips on the back-to-back wrist roll? I can sort of get one, maybe two, but I struggle with keeping the momentum going. So if you can get one or two back-to-back wrist rolls, you're in good shape. What causes a person not to be able to continually do it likely depends. I would have to see a video on what you're doing. But when I do it, there's a certain motion that I find works really well. So I'm going to break down how I do my back-to-back wrist rolls. Now, technically, when I teach it, you're really just trying. Some people roll it off of the top of their hand to get the roll. I generally go down by the wrist and I lower my grip. And the reason for that, I feel like I have more control when it goes by my wrist than when it's over by my hand. Now, this could be totally up to you how you want to do this, but I generally have a middle grip, and when I let go, the chuck is practically in my hand. So what I'm going to do is I'll point it forward, and the moment the chuck, do you see how it's like pointed forward, like pew, pointing it forward, and the moment the chuck gets about to this full extension, I kind of hold my hand upwards and I flick it up with my fingers like that, bink. And what's going to happen is this is just going to land right back to where it got flicked. So it's almost like one of those machines that just, and it just flips right back into itself. And it allows me to do this forever. But you can kind of see, and I'll try to go as slow as possible. You can see that you can kind of see that when I'm here, I'm really giving it like a little bit of a push with my fingertips. And it's not necessary, but for me, like just adding that little extra push what I'm trying to say is this is over exaggerated with the fingers. You can just add a snap though. And that's what allows you to do it for a long time. I feel like anytime that you do something for a long time, what you realize is almost everything you do is relaxed as possible, but there's usually a snap, especially with nunchucks. There's usually a little snap or a little bit of sharp motion that happens for a very split second at the exact right spot. For this one, it's the moment the chuck is just about to get stuck on your wrist, there's a little flick that happens, and then you just wait for the chuck to replace itself. It wraps up again, and you do that flick again, and it just goes on forever and ever. And that will help you to do it. Really, if you get stuck too, one of the best things you can do is just watch TV and just practice your back-to-back wrist rolls without looking. Just do your back-to-back wrist rolls, watch your shows, and let your muscle memory try to work itself free. You know, see if you can just let your muscle memory just kind of work itself, so you can get more comfortable doing it. Being able to do it a couple times is great. It just means you got to keep doing it and figuring out maybe if there's probably one thing that you're doing that is causing it to kind of lose itself. It's probably a plane, or it could be a release time. But see if you can identify what that is, and I bet you'll be able to get that. All right, Sam Yar says, what is the difference between the dolphin throw and a front-to-front that goes around the wrist? So a dolphin throw and a front-to-front, well, a front-to-front that goes around the wrist, I'm assuming is more of a contact move, and I totally dropped that. I was thinking something more like a contact move like this. That's going to be a 720 front-to-front, and then as I twist it out, it flings it in the air, whoosh, like that. Even if we're talking about this motion, that's definitely different than a dolphin throw, but if you're just talking about a front-to-front like this too, where we're just spinning it regularly, and it would be very similar to a front-to-front throw, except for instead of letting it roll around the wrist, we pop it up and we open our hand. The difference is the dolphin throw kind of looks like a dolphin. The chuck is going over the shoulder. So the chuck direction is very similar to an over the shoulder pass here. So the dolphin throw goes under the shoulder to over the shoulder. So we have a low grip like this, and it pushes that direction. It does look similar visually, but to the person that's spinning it, it's very different. It's very different to try to throw a chuck when it's underneath your armpit and behind you. It's usually harder, I would have to say. But the dolphin throw, that's the way you can identify it, is it's swinging up from behind the shoulder and coming forward like a dolphin. Whereas this one just is simply a front-to-front hand roll, but then you just pop it up at the last second. Or you have the harder version, which adds a 720 syncopated, and it rolls through it. So that one rolls twice, and when it's at its maximum, you pop it up with your wrist, and then you catch it. So hopefully that helps. Let me know. The dolphin throw and the front to front. Yeah, there's so many good throws with nunchucks, that's for sure. And then I think the other one is even harder, is the opposite of dolphin. I don't even know what they call it, but we just call it under the arm throw. But I feel like this is even a more awkward throw, because this one you have to get the chuck to go underneath the armpit, but it can't touch your arm, and you flick it up. You flick it up with your hand behind you to try to get the chuck to fly up in the air. I find that this one is like a really difficult one, and I generally suggest that you lean backwards for it to like give it more oomph so you can catch it. I feel like some of the throws that have been invented are really tricky for a lot of work for the amount of gain that you get for it. Let's see. IQFlow says it'd be nice to see some staff or rope dart ideas if possible. With the nunchucks, like staff and rope dart ideas. One of my favorite staff ideas from the chucks is just the simple turnout that happens here. That comes from a staff motion. It's the ability to spin a chuck behind your waist over there, but I like it just because it's just out of nowhere. Like you're doing your spins or whatever, and then if it's in my left hand and my chuck is going clockwise, I'm rotating it, so there's a half moon happening under here, and as this chuck spins this direction, I'm basically going to step with it. So as the chuck is to the outside, my leg is going to kind of follow this. I'm going to turn 180 degrees until it goes to the inside. So from outside to inside is where I take my step. And my step on my right foot is gonna mimic that. So it's gonna be right to left. So like that. So if I'm over here, boom, like that. If you take that step exactly as it is, it'll allow you to take another step because you'll be open, and I'll show you what I mean. Once you step over here, you're pretty much open. You're doing a circular spin to your side, right? So all I have to do is turn to meet it. So in one fell swoop, it's here, right? Except for we do it a little bit faster and we keep the motion going so it doesn't lose the illusion. But again, I'll be like, you know, boom or whatever, catch, whoosh. It's all just one fell swoop. Of course, the rotor pass is definitely taken from the staff. The rotor pass, one of my favorite nunchuck moves, do it all the time, is just the good old rotor. Good old rotor. This is the rotor with the staff, and then you have the rotor pass with the chucks. Cool thing is a lot of these things do transmit over. So while I can do the rotor pass, you can do an X catch with the staff. It looks a lot different though because you don't have the ropes. So if I had this staff, come on now, don't be shy. There we go. If I have the staff and I hold it with my underhand and overhand grip, I can still push my hands through to create an X catch like this. But since it's solid, it has like a different feel to it. So it's going to give me different options. One is I might be able to spin it over to the side. Just keep in mind that because we have a solid core, there's no rope in the middle, you can still do a lot of the nunchuck moves. Here's a back-to-back. Now the back-to-back, you'll notice there's this, when it rolls over my wrist, it has this bony part of it, right? So you modify it a little bit, and I'll show you, like when I modify it, I go over my finger instead of the wrist, the bone of my wrist, and it's a lot smoother like this. And what I've basically done here is, instead of rolling it across the bone of my wrist over here, which causes it to kind of be blocky when I catch it, because again, I don't have that rope to wrap around it, what I'm doing is I'm going to wrap it around a finger instead. So it wraps around the back of my hand, and what happens when it comes over here is I just lift my pointer finger up, and the whole staff spins around my pointer finger like this. And this allows it to be a lot more smooth as opposed to a nunchuck, which I couldn't spin with one finger. The cool thing about this move is you'll notice that my hand kind of moves with it because it's spinning around the back of my hand and then it's spinning around my pointer finger. It's a lot more circular, it's a lot more movement, which allows me to do more isolations. So I can move my arm in a circle with this motion and create a kind of a different effect with the staff, or I can move it opposite and create a very easy anti-spin. Woo! It's a lot easier to get an anti-spin this way with this type of roll than it is with the chucks by far. Just because it's in constant motion, and the staff will keep spinning regardless because there's no rope. So it actually makes things like anti-spins and in-spins a little bit easier. So yeah, I thought that was those are some examples of nunchuck to staff or staff to nunchuck. There's a ton of them. Obviously, chain unwinders do not work with the staff. That would be hilarious though. Let's see how a chain unwinder would look. It'd look like this. Pretty cool, right? And look, I can throw a chain unwinder and catch it into a chain unwinder. Yes, yes, it's amazing. But if we translate over the nunchucks, you know, then we have this motion. So not all moves translate over, but you will have some that will. Again, we have the X catch that can translate over. A lot of the contact staff moves won't translate over because it requires you to have a very stiff staff that rolls around your body. So like things like conveyor belts and things of that nature are a lot easier with a staff than a chuck. But things like the rotor pass throws, there's a rotor pass throw with the staff. You know, anything dealing with turns and movement. So that one motion that I did here, like that, is the same with the chucks, except it requires one less spin. It's still the same thing. It was the thing I just showed you where your foot steps with the circle of the chuck. So when it's to the outside of the body, the right foot gets ready and it steps over and unwinds. So very similar to the staff motion too. Whoosh. Very similar. So staff and nunchuck definitely have a very nice relationship together. When we're talking about rope dart and staff, because you were asking about rope dart and staff, that's a little bit trickier because rope dart does a lot of wraps. And it's very hard for a nunchuck to be able to get these wraps in unless you hold it at an extremely low place. And there are a couple moves, but you won't be able to do shoots, of course. But I mean, there's different kinds of wraps that you can do if you hold it there. And I'll show you this one. I'll show you this move like this. This is a rope dart move that I translated over into a staff. And what you do is you hold it in the C grip. C grip means you hold the chuck right at the edge like this. This allows the chuck to have a rotation right at the end. I don't do the C grip very often unless I'm really trying to get big moves, right? Like this. So this gives the chuck the longest length I can possibly go. And I'm going to spin the chuck in front of me like this. And what we're going to try to do is it's almost like we're going to try to do an over-the-shoulder catch like this, right? Except for we're holding it really low, and we're going to let the chuck, we're going to try to dip our hand as close to the arm as possible. This creates the absolute most distance with this chuck. The moment it swings upwards, we're trying to move our elbow out of the way so it doesn't get hit by the chuck. And because the chuck's so small, it's a lot harder than a rope dart to get this to work. Basically, as it starts to spin up, you're going to move your elbow out of the way and it should finish the spin. You're basically trying to get it to spin from left to right or from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock without your elbow getting in the way. So the moment this comes up, the biggest thing you need to do is lift your elbow up, over, and around fast enough for the chuck not to touch it. It's very common when you first start this to just hit your arm and you can't get it because that elbow needs to get out of the way fast. And the moment it does, it's going to pull the chuck behind you, and then you can rotate it down by your hip and bring it back up. But again, that's going to be a C grip. If you have it low grip, you can't even get to that point because there's not enough space, as you can see. If we're at mid grip, it's kind of similar. You can kind of get it, but if you have the low C grip, you can kind of do this, well, rope dart inspired move, I suppose you can say. Are there other moves? I'm sure there are. Let me think. But it's all going to be very similar. It's all very similar. Like all the wraps and stuff are going to be kind of similar to the fact that you have to hold it in a low C grip and then practice all the little rope dart moves that you do. With the problem is you have very little time, so they have to be small motions compared to the rope dart where you have lots of time because there's a lot of rope wrapping around. I hope that helps. Those are just some explorations. I am definitely not a rope dart master. And I think if I explored it more, I'd probably have a little bit more techniques from the rope dart, but I have explored it enough to know a few things. All right. Hey, Ray, what's up? Late to the party, but I'm here listening to the first part in the car. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome, Ray. IQ says, what LED staff do you recommend? I mean, gotta say, man, like, these are Flow Toys Vision chucks, but I would say this is, especially when I do a performance, this catches people's attention, so I love this. I'm always a Flow Toys fan anyways, but this staff is just boss. Head to toe, it's an LED. So yeah, I kind of recommend this staff, definitely. Flow Toys Vision staff. It's a 4-foot LEDs from front to bottom. It does run a little bit of money though, you know, most LEDs do, but when it comes to LEDs, it's important to have a staff that is not only good, but is durable. And I think that that's an important factor because Flow Toys has their limited lifetime warranties, which are fantastic. I mean, I just sent in some, Flow Toys capsules, flow lights, sorry, they were before the capsules were even there. I sent some flow lights in that were almost 10 years old and they still took them in for credit and replaced the ones they could replace. So yeah, they're really good. Other suggestions for LED staves, it's really hard for me to say. I've had friends that built staves in the past and I enjoyed them, but I've always come across the same issue, which is anything with LED is fragile. Like it's fragile. So unless you like have something with a good warranty or you know how your electronics, I generally just, it's really hard for me to make any recommendations because the guy that built my old LED stuff no longer makes them. But if you build your own, that's also another option for sure. It's definitely a deep rabbit hole, but it's pretty fun, like to work the LED props and be able to build your own. Like I said, I know how to build some LED stuff, but it takes so much time that I would only do it if my life depended on it. So I guess the long story short is Flow Toys. I recommend Flow Toys for sure for LEDs, just about everything. If I'm doing a show, still Flow Toys. But if I'm doing, there's very specific times though, because I also use Ignis for for their pixels, and I also use Pyroterra for their pixels. Sometimes you need to draw a logo, a company logo, or something of that nature. But then we're getting into props that are so delicate that you don't really ever want to. I don't know, man. I never train with pixels. They can draw pictures. They can draw really cool stuff. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'll show you. These are pixel chucks. And I have pixel stabs and pixel poi. And these are a little bit different than visions because they actually draw pictures. You probably can't see, but it's because my camera can't capture it. But this looks like lightning in real life. The camera's gonna like cut it up in the shutter, or it may look like a snowflake. I can draw pictures of whatever I want. Look, it's a pizza. I can draw pictures whatever I want, but with pixels, they definitely have some of the biggest wow factor because you can program other people's pictures of their kids or logos or words that people want to see. But then you have the problem of these things just usually break really easily. With Pyroterras, I know I've had to replace it 4 times. It's about like once every 6 to 8 months or so when I'm using them. I don't know, like once a month for gigs. So, you know, you just want to be really delicate. I haven't had the best luck with pixels, so in terms of durability, but fantastic for gigs. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. All right, I got a couple things. Give me just a second here. Checking out the Facebook really quick here. Oh, I also want to tell everyone, let's just go over here because this is important. We have a Flow Tricks 2020 video compilation. I hope you guys all join me on this one. Gosh, I can't believe I didn't talk about this sooner. Let me go to the website here. That's my email again. Here we go. Boom. Okay. Fire Ant on the official Flow Tricks group he's the one hosting it, but it's for Flow Tricks, and this will be on our YouTube channel too. Submit a 15-second video with any proper weapon, and you can submit it to Facebook Messenger to Anthony. If you can't get it there, you can always send it to my ken.flowtricks@gmail.com, and I can forward it out to Anthony as well. But by August 31st, so 15 seconds of you rocking out with your prop. Highly suggestive. 15 seconds of you rocking out with your prop. We're going to compile all the videos together, make a cool video, and showcase what the Flow Tricks community is all about. I really encourage you to do it. You've still got about a week or so. I know some of you guys, this is your first time hearing it, but 15 seconds, no problem. Like, you can get that, easy, right? Just grab your flow, or even use some of your pre-recorded stuff if you don't have time, and send it over, and we'll get that for you. All right, awesome. So, again, this is a live stream, y'all. So if you have any questions, definitely send a message. Let me know either on the ken.flowtricks@gmail.com, or ask me on Facebook or on YouTube. And I'm distracted because I'm trying to see if anyone sent me anything in my email, and I didn't get anything yet. So if you do have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. All right, so I was talking about offhanded tricks before we stopped, and your ability to be able to independently do things with your other hand. It takes practice to do this. It's much like playing the guitar and singing at the same time. It's like once you do one thing, you realize that it's a lot harder once you start doing something else. And for me, I'm trying to do 3 things. I'm trying to talk, think, spin, and move my arm. So it's even harder doing 3 things. Other things you can do besides move it independently, how this applies into actual flow, of course, is like your ability to keep your hands moving in motion or whatever, so you can kind of get a lot more flair or movements. It gives you a lot more options. You can also control your hand, like just the ability to control your other hand to make it do whatever you want. Just gives you more options in general. Even if you have your hand behind your back, just holding it until the chuck goes behind it, and then catching it, and then switching it out. These are all good drills, in my opinion, that you can be working on. It will eventually help you with your double chucks because you'll be able to independently do 2 things at once, but it'll also help you with your single chucks because, again, like I've said before, the one advantage single chucks has over double chucks, there's 2 things that single chucks does better than double chucks. Number 1 is that you are in control of the chuck, meaning I can stop any time, turn, move, whatever I want to do. My body is in more control of it. When I'm doing double chucks, I have to wait for the pattern to open up, so I have to wait until the pattern's open before I take my turn, and then I'm stuck back in the pattern until I can open it up again. So I have to wait for my patterns to resolve when I'm doing double chucks. With single chucks, you're in control. With double chucks, the chucks are in control. The techniques that you're doing are going to control your ability to move. So use that to your advantage. The second one is you have a free hand. Use that to your advantage, because your ability to just grab hold and stop is going to be huge. And it's also going to be a big factor in what will make your single chuck more exciting or more interesting. So if you're only using your right hand, if you're only using one hand and the other hand just sitting there like flopping around, it's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying it could be maximized more if you're able to use both hands. If you're switching them off, if this hand is moving or generally just doing something to accentuate the whole motion, you have this advantage with single chucks. With double chucks, obviously, it's harder to control because you don't have an open hand. Most people will generally gravitate towards double chucks just because it's visually stunning. But I'm telling you, like, you can make single chucks very powerful too. You just have to like realize what the advantage is of using 1/2 and then capitalize on it and really shoot for it so it's your own style or your own thing. There's a lot of ways you can use a free hand when you're not doing a chuck. Figure it out. Think of what you can do. You know, I feel like the syncopateds are part of the reasons why I love doing single chucks is because there's just so many different options. Even if you're using your other hand as an obstacle or something that it needs to roll around, that's still more interesting than just having it spinning around one hand and doing one thing, right? So keep it interesting, keep it awesome. All right, Santiago 314. Hi Ken, where do I get the LED nunchucks? LED nunchucks? Well, again, LEDs. Whenever we're talking LEDs, I'm going to say Flow Toys. FlowToys.com is a great place to get LED chucks. If you want high performance pixel LED chucks, like the ones you just saw from here, these are Ignis, IGNIS, poi. Just keep in mind that, again, the Ignis are amazing and I love them, but if I had to choose, especially if I wasn't performing, I'd probably go with Flow Toys. And it's not that I don't like these, I love these chucks. It's just the fact that if the Flow Toys chucks break, they're pretty easy to fix, whereas almost all pixel props have to be shipped far away. So the last time my pixels broke, it took me almost 3 months to get them back because they got lost in customs or customs held it or something happened where it took me 3 months of waiting to get my chucks back. Whereas Flow Toys is in the States, so it's a lot easier. You have a quicker turnaround time. So I would say Flow Toys unless you're performing and you need the pixels, and then I would say Ignis. Yep. All right, let's keep going. All right, so if you think about this, like with syncopated wrist rolls, it's very similar that you can give your hand something to do, your opposite hand something to do, right? But this also goes with if you're holding a nunchuck. So this is just something to think about with doubles. If you're doing double chucks, you can kind of mimic a syncopated wrist roll, but you have this chuck in the way, so you have to push it into your wrists so it becomes one arm. And this can be a little bit trickier, but as you can see, as we're spinning the chuck, we can still pull off a syncopated wrist roll. It's just a lot harder. So while you're practicing your syncopateds, if you want to make it a little bit harder, try it with doubles. You're going to hold it more mid-grip, because if you hold it low, you can do this too and pin it to your arm. I generally go mid-grip just to make it a little bit easier. And then I pin it over here, and then when it wraps around the wrist, it just has to go around a wider area, but you can still do your syncopateds with that. All right, next up I think we're going to do a little bit of hyperstyle. I think I've covered this enough. Use your offhand, I think it's going to be great. It'll help you. There's a lot of freedom with that. Now, hyperstyle, I think I'm going to just cover some of the basics because we've been getting into advanced territory a lot with some of these Sunday night ones. So the most basic hyper thing that I can show you is the 1, 2, 3, 4 hyper. This is just a simple system that I developed, which is number 1 is opposite hand on the outside, boom, like this. So if I'm using my right hand, it's going to be on the opposite side on the top. Basically, if you think about it, I'm making 4 legs of a table, okay? And then we're starting on the leg that's opposite of the hand that's spinning it. So this is 1, Number 2 goes on the same side. Boom, here, that's 2. Number 3 is on the bottom of this side. So it's top, top. This is bottom here. This is swinging down towards the bottom. So now we have 3 points. 1, 2, 3. And then 4 is the bottom of the opposite hand. 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You notice I say a lot of times number 3 bounce. The number 3 bounce is just that. 1, 2, 3. That's why we call it a number 3 bounce, or that's why I call it a number 3 bounce, because it just goes off of that table bounce system, right? I do this one a lot. I feel like the number 3 bounce is one of the most often used bounces. It's great to use anytime you're in flow and you just drop it into a number 3 bounce, and allows you to do turns and do all kinds of things. You can also do number 2 bounces. Don't get me wrong. You can also do it in the same way if you're bouncing it up on the top too. You can still do the same motions where you're swinging it up and letting it bounce across the top. So don't think just because I'm telling you about number 3 bounces that you can't do the exact reverse. You absolutely can. And that's the same with anything, really. Even if you have the opposite arm, you can still do turns with this. You just have to remember that when you're doing this, you have to learn how to do a figure 8 and a reverse figure 8. If you can do both of those, then you just have to remember that anytime you hit it, you're going to do the opposite. And I'll show you what I mean. If I'm hitting it here, this goes into a figure 8. So if I want to bounce it again, bounce from here, it's going to go back to a reverse figure 8 over on this side. So I'm going to bounce it off my hand again, becomes a figure 8, bounce, reverse figure 8. Figure 8, reverse figure 8. So just keep that in mind. Boom, boom, right? And then we also have, of course, so you have the top and the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this doesn't have to be on the hand either. Just because I'm bouncing off the hand, the concept is more visual. So what I mean to say is like, it's like a template that you can put over something. So we can also use the elbow or the top, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm not using my hand at all, but it's still the same thing. We're just using different bounce point on the opposite side. So keep that in mind as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can also just extend it out. These are still the same numbers. It's still a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a way just to help visualize how you want to do that. So think about how you want to work with these bounces. And again, like I said, even if you do your bounces, you can still do the same kinds of bounces over and over as you do your turns or anything else. Then if we lower the table a little bit, I'm going to post it down a little bit. You can lower the table so it's not necessarily up on these 4 points, but you can also go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have like a table that's going down into the legs. And what's nice about this is realizing we have 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we also have 4 points up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the realization that you can also bounce between this table on top and this table on the bottom. And this is just, I'm not going to go into it too much, but you can see that there's different ways that you can play with just connecting different dots together simply by bouncing it back and forth. And of course you can add extra dots too, like right now we're going to the outsides of the legs, but what if we go to the inside of the legs? We can definitely go inside of the leg as well. That gets a little bit deeper, but those are the main bounce points that you do in Hyper. Is you're going to have the table up top and the table at the bottom, kind of by the legs. Keep in mind there's 4 points inside, outside of both legs, and then you just start thinking of how can I connect these dots. And you can go nice and slow to try to figure out different kinds of patterns that you can do to make this work. Once you start knowing basic things like redirects, you can like start coming up with some really crazy ideas on top of all of that to make the Hyperstyle look more exciting. Because obviously if you're doing these, if you're only doing those bounces, it's going to look kind of, I'm not going to say it's going to look goofy, but this, just kind of has like a very static feel. You know what I mean? So you gotta have to like add variations, more sharp punches and pauses and create it more dynamic. But when you're just practicing, try to get some of these out until you come up with your own combos. If you're also thinking about that, it's also like if you bounce from one leg to the other, that's fine and dandy, but what would make that more exciting? Well, what about a jump? That might be a little more exciting than going. This is kind of funny because it's like you can march with it. So get creative. Don't think that you have to think well, I gotta lift this leg and I gotta lift this leg. Maybe it's gonna be like some sort of weird, rounded off, like almost like a round kick. I have not stretched, but it could even be a round kick. Well, that's an outside crescent, but an unstretched outside crescent, I might add. But maybe it's, you're adding some sort of strike with it too, so it looks more interesting than just being in the way, you know, like punch, you know, punch. I don't know. I don't know if you can hook punch into a chuck. But maybe something like that, or an uppercut with a throw. Or something, I don't know. Just make it, you know, and then we're going back to having that offhand doing something more interesting, and all that blends together. So there it is. Awesome. All right, I see some messages being typed, so I'm gonna come down and all right, so Santiago says they look spectacular and they are not achieved by chance. Yeah, no, those chucks, the Ignis as well as the Flow Toys, I highly recommend. Again, I love Flow Toys just because they're local and you're able to get them fixed faster, and their warranty is amazing. Hey, what's up, Alex? Hope things are good, man. Getting back to bounce points, do you have a vertical for bounces as well as horizontal bounces? Do you have your chest and kneecaps and feet bounce also? Absolutely. So let's get into some crazier. Okay, so we have been just going over the very basic 4 bounce points. And let's be honest, there's a million bounce points, right? We're going, this is all vertical. Are there horizontal bounce points? There absolutely is. And you'll see them more even as we do doubles. I'll show you an example. If I'm doing doubles, you'll notice I like have this kind of bounce, like all that is just hitting those bounce points. And the table is just being moved more to this side. And this side now, I'm just going to do 1 chuck. On this side, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So this time it's going to be outsides of the arms here. 1, 2. Well, we can't really do 3 under here, so it's more like 1, 2, 4, 3, I suppose, if we were to go off of that. I don't actually use a numbering system for this one, but it'd be like 1, 2, lift up your elbows, and get underneath, 3, 4. This is a nice one too, because especially if you have like an under the hand grip, you can see that there's a lot of really creative motions that you can do. Just add a little hand roll to it, and you can get some nice bounce variations. Or you have this, you're set up for a lot of creative things when it's going horizontally, because your hand is in the way more. As opposed to vertical, it's better for bounces. You can grab it, I suppose, like you can grab it and go into certain kinds of motions. When you're going horizontal, your hand is literally right there. So it just wants to move into these bounce points. So we'll go again, outside of the arms, underneath, and of course it goes lower too. But then you can play with, well, what if I catch it here and bounce it, you know? So we can exchange the different kinds of motions that we can do. I don't even know all the different kinds of bounce points, but you can just see like where we can take advantage of different kinds of passes as well as hand rolls to get into like different kinds of motions. Since it's going horizontal, I also feel like it's a lot easier to pull these off than on the vertical plane. Now, if we're going to take it lower, you'll also, we can go down to waist too. So now we have armpits down to waist. Now this isn't nearly as dramatic. These points, there's nothing in the way of these points. So this doesn't always have the same kind of effect, but it is good to drop it if you need to get to the lower points, like the legs first, because sometimes getting up here and down to the legs can look kind of like hunched back and over, but if you kind of drop it down, you're ready to go already to get it down to the legs. So in this point, we'll go down to the hips. So now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can just kind of practice with this. If you want extra speed with this, the best way to get speed with this is to hold this close to your center and to twist your hips. You don't have to look weird. You will end up looking weird if you use your body the whole time. So it's kind of like a little bit of a combination. Like I'm moving my hips just enough, I'm moving my center just enough, and my hand is kind of swinging like. So it is moving, because if we just kept it still and we used our body, it doesn't look, it doesn't have the aesthetics. but I'm definitely using my body to help out with the speed. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can add a little bit of vertical just to make it interesting too. So let's say we're down here by the hips. You can bounce, swing it up vertically, but then go back to horizontal. So these adding a nice little sneaky like vertical before you go into horizontal and vice versa is really nice. You know, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Then we have, of course, down below. Now, when we go below the waist with this one, it's a lot more interesting. There's a lot of interesting things we can do. Of course, we have the outer legs. We can lift up the leg and also bounce it off of the shin. Now, you have to be careful about these shin bounces because you can hurt yourself if you lift up your leg and this part of the chuck hits the bone of your shin. That's going to hurt a lot. So I'll give you an example here. If I bounce it off of my delt on the same side, I can lift up my knee and bounce it there. Boom. Like that. I can also bounce it off my shoe. And in this way, this is a great way to destroy chain chucks, by the way. So if you have chain nunchucks, you start doing some of these bounces, you can put a lot of force and power and snap your chucks pretty easy. I think I've broken more chucks with bounces than any other. So now it's like knee, kick. So in this one, it's kind of holding up. On the second one, I'm holding my arm further out and it's kind of stalling so my foot can kick through with it. And it can be the other way too. So let's say I bounce it off my waist, I can go from the inside. Now you have less space from here. You have very little space to get this to move. So it's more like your wrist is just kind of trading it off. But it's the same thing. Kick, kick. It's a lot easier to do from the same side, but you can go opposite side or same side. And you can also kick it on the same side, obviously. Easiest kick is going to be opposite foot. So if I'm standing here and I hold it here, that's going to be the easiest kick to get across. And you can get into some weird bounces like behind the leg if you really want to get into it. Like there's also behind the leg bounces like this. And this one is more like, for instance, you can do a combo that swings over the head, behind the leg. And it has a little bit slightly different visual if you start thinking about how to spin the chuck behind the body like this. I don't do those as much, but keep in mind that those are points too. And then when we're also talking about vertical, I've only shown you vertical in front. You also have like vertical in back, like these motions. So when I'm talking about these 1, 2, 3, 4s, don't forget also you have 4 points if I stood to the side too. So this, in this way, it'd be 1 to the leg, right? Shoulder to the leg. But then when we do the number 3 bounce, it goes to the back of the leg here. And there's a really nice combo that you can do with this one to work this one out. So if you've kind of felt this a little bit, so it's like an over-the-shoulder pass, inner thigh bounce, right? To under the arm, to an outer thigh bounce. You can actually add, you can add a cross grab when you do your number 3 bounce. So here, 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 cross grab, and then switch over to the other side. And what you can do here is you can break this technique in half where it becomes a combo where you can kind of step forward with each bounce. So now what we'll do is number 3 bounce, outer thigh bounce, whoosh, whoosh, number 3 bounce, cross grab. Number 3 bounce, outside, number 3 bounce, cross grab. That's too far. What it'll allow you to do is to walk with it. So if I'm far back, it'll let me to move forward. I'm just doing these bounces, stepping forward, cross grabbing, stepping forward. It allows me to get really cool motions, really cool movement. So, and then we haven't even gone over to diagonal. We're not going to go over that too much. A lot of times diagonal is just you're using the vertical to reach a horizontal point, you know, obviously. But there's diagonal, and there's all kinds of motions behind the back that you can work on with bounces that I don't want to get into too much. Those are the main bounce points though, for sure. Neck, armpit, hips, outer thigh, inner thigh, feet. You work those points and you connect them together and you have a lot of really cool options. A lot of cool options. Yep. All right. Let's see here. Basam. Hello, Basam TV. Alpha says, I need to get to a Zoom meeting. Have a great week and hopefully see you Thursday. Please, yeah, would love to see you in that Zoom meeting. Every Thursday, we have 1.5 hours of Zoom for the Flotrix Pro members, people that have donated on the patreon.com page under the Flotrix Pro. And we just Zoom class where everyone can come together and spin, and I can watch and give suggestions, or we can talk and jam. It's a great time. We still don't have very many people in it, so it's a lot of personal instruction. If you're interested, though, that's on patreon.com/Flotrix. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Alex, awesome, man. Yeah, I found when I move, or when I more throw my body into it, the bounces get quicker. Yeah, it really does. Because your hand is, when you're doing bounces, anytime you're, and this is just true with any kind of movement, really, anytime your hand is close to your center, just like when you lift weights, you know how much easier it is to lift weights here as opposed to out here, right? So when you're spinning anything at all, the moment you start crossing your center, the more you're able to put your hips and your shoulders and your body into it, the less you actually have to do. Like, it reduces the amount of work you have to do to create for the power you create. And I mean, like, martial arts teaches that a lot too, with throwing a punch and whatnot. You know, you just get a lot more force and power. I guess I won't say it doesn't always like use less energy, because sometimes throwing your whole body into something does use more, but it provides a great amount of control, accuracy, and power. Like, you can just feel it when someone's connected with their body. Alex, I like the under the leg one. Oh, nice. Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, but there's some weird bounces with, okay, so once we get into this territory, it gets kind of goofy. I mean, for instance, this one's kind of cool. Like, you can bounce it here. There's a bounce point here, obviously, because once you get to the body wraps, it gets kind of weird. There's one here. So you could get a low grip and be like, roll, snap, boom, 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 whoa. You know, well, that one's not really so good, but this one is much better. It's just kind of weird. And then you even have ones at the leg, which I think are kind of silly, but again, if there's one here. So like, this one's kind of cool because you can do a nice pass. If you bounce it here, you can pass it to your other hand. And what this is a same stick pass. I'm gonna drop this. It's a nice bounce though, because if you're doing your here, you bounce it and you can pass it. Oh man, you can pass it to your other hand right there. So it's kind of cool. You're just like working your way down, and you do a bounce. And what's happening here is as I bounce it, I'm just exchanging my hand so I can pull it back to the front. And then there's also some weird ones where you can bounce it underneath the leg and bounce it across the other leg. So now we have like this double bounce that happens on the inner thigh. Sometimes it can look goofy depending on how people do it. But this one, you really got to get your legs spread apart so the nunchuck doesn't hit it. But you can see it's like 1, 2, like you almost have like a new table bounce here. So, and then we have these weird passes where we can go behind the back of the, see how we can like start playing with that. All of this is really just kind of like inverting. We're almost like inverting the bounces, like the table idea, because a lot of it is grabbing behind the back or behind something and letting it flow in front of us. So it's still very similar, it's just coming from a different angle. And in small doses, I think it looks cool. And in large doses, sometimes it can look like really, really weird. So, yep. Let's see here. Alex, outer thigh bounce to under armpit, I struggled with the majority. I may also need to train this one. Yeah, go for it. I think the most important thing is, no matter, even if I say it looks a little goofy, nothing should stop you from exploring it, because you might have a way to make it look better. And it shouldn't matter what I think anyways, to be honest. I'm just here to guide you or to help you all. So if you think that you found a better way or you don't agree with me, I like that. I like that a lot. I like the fact that we can't disagree and we're not gonna we should be able to disagree, and I think that's great. So practice. If you think it's weird but you like it, do it anyways. Especially if I say, well, that's weird. I think you should do it especially because of that. Do it because you like it. Good. I'm telling you all now, like right now, that's how I've always been, and I'll always be that way. Like, you should never let anyone stop you from doing what you love doing. unless it's like murdering people or something crazy. I don't know. I just watched Hannibal on Netflix, so there you go. Yeah, you should always follow your own drummer, so you can have your own style. All right, more stuff to practice. And Kasim, sorry if I butchered that. Highly underrated, bro. Your videos help me a ton. Sick skill. Love for that, bro. No, thank you, man. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, I know that I'm doing a niche art, and there's no amount, like, I'll never get big. Like, I will never get big because I don't take the time. I don't want to spend all this time making this luxurious video. I just want to make good videos for people, but I don't need to, like, polish it off in the way, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to get good material out there and then just watch this thing grow. I'm very underground in that aspect, I think. Even though there's a lot of views, it'll never quite hit. And I'm okay with that. I think the most important thing is that I get the information out there. So I really appreciate that. And even just seeing these comments on my YouTube channel is enough for me to keep going. Like, I know that I'm doing my job, so that makes me happy. All right. Well, we're about at the end of this live stream. If you have any other last minute questions, I'll probably wait for about a minute or so just to see what you all have for me. Otherwise, we're about to get it closed up, I think. Like I said, man, today was, I try to jog every day. I jog even when I don't want to. I think it's really, oh, wait, someone messaged me here. Oh, here we go. Santiago, I can't stop watching your videos. I became addicted. Thanks for sharing so much magic. Thank you, Santiago. No, I appreciate that. I love the fact that some of the videos I made were like 10 years ago and people are still watching it. That's pretty amazing to me, you know? It's pretty amazing to see like your work and your efforts, even if it doesn't catch on now. Who knows, man? Maybe in 10 years, this thing will be huge. Who knows? It's hard to say because people are still watching some of my old videos now, and I feel like those are outdated, but you know, that's just it. Oh, okay, we're gonna finish with this one. What's a simple addition I can learn to my skill set? So simple is a difficult question because what's simple to me may not be simple to you and vice versa. But if you don't know the cross crab and the rotor pass, we kind of went over that. I feel like those are all simple additions that are fantastic. I'll give you a couple of simple things that I think are great for the skill set. One is the rotor pass here. And the rotor pass is basically two passes. The hand is spinning, you're catching it to the outside, you're catching it, and then you're flipping it and it's rolling to the inside of your hand and you're grabbing it underneath. So outside, roll it all the way around inside. The rotor pass is essential, in my opinion, because while you're doing your spins, you can easily change hands over to the other side, or you can change it back. So a rotor pass is a great addition to your skill set in that way. The other one is the cross grab, and we kind of covered this earlier, but the cross grab is another one. As I'm spinning it, if I'm going the opposite way, instead of this way, if my chuck is going the opposite way, then my hands can cross over and I can grab it to pass it to the other side. Again, this is a setup for a lot of really cool combos. So if you're going one way, you can rotor pass, and if you're going the opposite way, you can cross grab. If you learn both of those, it'll give you options to always being able to change your hands. I feel like that's great. One more thing that I think would be great to talk about is figure eight wrist rolls. Learn these things. If you don't know your figure eight wrist rolls, learn them. If you do know them, start working on your extensions. Start working on different things that you can do. Holy cow. Start working on different things you can do with them, with moving them in space. Maybe you're gonna hold your hand out here and figure eight wrist roll. See this? Like I just changed the figure eight wrist roll. So now I'm basically trying to reach my hand to start it and doing the figure eight wrist roll out here. Or I'll hold my hand up here and do the figure eight wrist roll, or whatever. You notice it's flying out of my hand a lot, and that's okay. Because I'm trying to get myself to talk and look at the camera and do figure eight wrist rolls that I don't normally do. The whole idea is with figure eight wrist rolls, you have this huge amount of space that's happening in front of you. So if you're a little bit bored with them, if you know how to do them, start like moving your hand in space to try to get your hand to move to that direction, and it will change the dynamics as well as the look. All right, y'all. Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. And with that said, I'll see some of you on Thursday in the Pro Tricks group. And everyone else, I will see you all next Sunday. If you have any more videos or questions, send me a message, ken.flowtricks@gmail.com. Everyone be safe, be well, and I can't wait to do this again. Talk to y'all soon.